Good morning. This is John Presco, coming to you live from Springfield, Oregon at 5 a.m. exactly. Uh, this broadcast is coming from the New Radio Church of God that was founded by Herbert Armstrong, that was broadcast on KORE, that was located about a mile and a half on Laura Street. I can walk to where that radio station used to be in about 20 minutes. It was torn down. I tried to save it. I wrote several emails um, to the Springfield city government. I actually might have gone there before the city council. Today, we're going to talk about Jesus being very legalistic versus not realistic or anti-realistic, as depicted in the New Testament. And whether he was legalistic or anti-legalistic is carried on in Acts and all the letters associated with Paul of Tarsus, Saul Paul, who argues against the Judeans, Jews basically of the original church, who were teaching that the followers of the way, the new Christian church, had to obey some, if not all, the laws that the Jews followed or obeyed. The laws that are found in the Pentateuch, that was the 5 books of Moses, that were basically dictated to Moses by God. God actually was on earth. He appeared to Moses, putting him in the cleft of a rock so he could only get a glimpse of his backside. It's a strange story. But then later on, he takes 30 or 60 elders up to the mountain there, and they have dinner with God. And one of them says, "Oh my gosh, I've seen the face of God. Surely I will die." And God said, "No, you won't die. Enjoy your meal. We're gonna, you're gonna having dinner with God." So from that dinner till today, a lot has happened, and I'm going to really look at the idea that God is dead, at least for the Jews and the Christians. And this teaching, as altered as it is, makes up the Judeo-Christian religion, in which there are, 500 million Christians on the planet. And about 40 minutes ago, I got on my phone here and I Googled Christian leaders concerned about the bombing in Gaza. I got nothing. I think there was one citation, but it was oblique. But then I asked whether the Pope was calling for mercy in this bombing of Gaza. And yes, he does show humanitarian concern. And that's the key word, humanitarian. God was supposed to be the God Yahweh or the Lord or God of the Jews, the God of the Christians were supposed to be merciful and lenient and show humanitarian concern, even for your enemies. A lot of people are converted in prison. A lot of prisoners that had murdered their families and done heinous things. But when they're incarcerated, a lot of them are finding Jesus and God, and they become devout Christians, evangelicals. How about Jews? So in looking at what Gaza became a giant prison where armed men came to rule Gaza, say armed prisoners. A lot of prisoners do become armed when they're in prison. They make shanks, weapons to murder fellow prisoners and guards. But that's what the return to Zion created. We are seeing basically genocide going on right before our very eyes. In a modern world with access to all kinds of media, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, which I'm talking to you on, we've never seen this up close and personal. Do most of us not want this to happen? Yes. But apparently the Jews are hell-bent on having this happen. They really want this to happen. They want revenge. So they looks like they're going to just pulverize the Gaza, and they're not allowing fuel or food in. The humanitarian organizations are giving up. Hospitals can't operate without fuel. There's Food for Humanity has quit. They can't bake any bread without fuel. Food is not getting to the people of Gaza, and how many children are going hungry and cold right now? See, maybe 50,000. And then that's retribution. That's God's justice being administered to the people of Gaza. After 9/11, I protested against the war in downtown Eugene because I knew it was coming. As a biblical scholar, I knew if you launched anything that looked like a crusade to smite the enemy, of Jesus and his God, which is a different God than the Jews, and that's what we're going to get into. There's two gods, three maybe, if the God Allah, if Islam sees their God as being different God than the Jews, is there different God than the Christians? Well, there is the birth of John the Baptist and Jesus in the Quran. And I think we're going to get to that in one of these broadcasts. I'm 8 minutes into this. My great-great-great-great-grandfather, my 8th, 9th great-grandfather, John Wilson, was the head of the Massachusetts Bay Colony, and he was a Puritan leader. And when he came and established his colony in Massachusetts, right away he and other men of God attempted to befriend the Native Americans. That was successful at first. John Wilson helped John Eliot write the first Bible written in America in the Native American language. They believe from their first contact that the Native Americans, native to this country, the Jews were not native to the Promised Land or Israel. That's why it was promised to them. And they conquered it, and they liquidated all the peoples that were there. And Joshua did that, and other people. So the Bible was written in the language. It's quite an amazing feat. I believe the Harvard Press was the first one to publish that Indian or Native American Bible. But then there was a one tribe and one chief. He says, no, I'm not going to go along with this. This is our land. You're invaders. You're taking our land. You're changing our values, and you're changing our gods and the way we worship and who we worship for 20,000 years or so. So, I'm going to fight you. I'm going to terrorize you. I'm going to, when your man's out in the field, I'm going to come in there and uh, rape your wife and your daughters, and I'm going to tie them up, and I'm going to burn them alive. And that's the war that this tribe in Massachusetts conducted against the Puritans, the war of terrorism. My great great grandmother Dorothy Hodges, uh, her the natives of South Carolina uh, raided the family, killed the house, and killed the father, the parents, and she had 4 sisters, and 3 of them were tied up and burned alive. And she was rescued by a chief who made her his wife. And 14 years later, she comes out of the wilderness with a 14-year-old son, the son of this chief that murdered her sisters in a gruesome way, like the gruesome way we're seeing Hamas when they came over broke out of the mass prison basically and slaughtered Jewish men and women and children. They hacked up the children. Well, the Native Americans did that too. They wanted to really make the first settlers in America feel very dismayed and say, I don't want to live here anymore. After seeing the gruesome things done to my child and my daughter, who's being repeatedly raped by the Indian chief, I'm going back to England. And that was the purpose. And hence, well, so to combat this ongoing terrorism by this tribe, John Wilson kind of launched this crusade to go get them, and he prayed for the army, and they fought and they killed a lot of this tribe, but they never extinguished it. And then for the next 200, 300 years, we've seen the liquidation of the genocide of the Native Americans. And the Modoc Wars up here, the border of Oregon, California, that were fought in the lava beds, is very similar to what we're seeing with Hamas and Israel. It's hideous. And my relative, John Fremont, and his wife came along, founded the Oregon Trail. A lot of settlers came to Oregon and California. And they tried to make, and they did make friends with the Native Americans here, but some tribes didn't go for it. They said, no, this is our land. You're intruders, you're trespassers. We want you to leave. And if you don't leave, we're going to try to make you leave. And if you stay, we want you to have a very hideous, fearful life. We want you to fear us coming through the door with torches and arrows and guns and slaughtering your wife and your children, torturing them, cutting their body parts off, scalping them. So John Wilson, he made a law in that colony that every church will have 2 guards sitting in the back the church, Puritan church, with their weapons, guarding the aisle, unless some crazed Native American rushes in and tries to hack the minister to death, because what's coming out of his mouth is being identified as the destroyer of this people and their way of worshiping. So there you go. The Bible is seen as the enemy. And so I'm going to go into what I'm putting off talking about what I was seeing on October 6th and what I started to write in my fictional book. It's almost historic fiction now, The Royal Janitor. Miriam Starfish Chrysling goes into analysis of Matthew 16, where Jesus says to Peter, "Get behind me, Satan." And get behind me, Satan. Matthew 16:23. I thought I had this quayed up, but I now I know I didn't. So, but Jesus did swear, "Peter, get out of my way. Satan, get lost. You have no idea how God works." What Jesus is saying, it's not Jesus. This is going to be the Paulites, the Paulines. Let's call them the Paulines. They have other names. Followers of Paul have gone into the four Gospels. I'm not even going to talk about how fraudulent that all is. But, okay, the four Gospels are written to cover up the idea you only had one Gospel, then the Paulines' doctoring of that one Gospel would be so obvious. You could just, like a deck of cards, take it, shuffle it together. Be too obvious. So they have little bits of the same teaching, spread out. Like "Get behind me, Satan" is another. I'm not, that kind of minister. I'm going to sit there and verse 40, verse 40, and I'm over here, and I don't have that memory. So I've got to do the best I can. And then give you the gist of it, and then maybe in future broadcasts, I'll get down to that. I'll rehearse. I'll have notes. But right now things are crazy. The whole world is coming undone, and basically, I'm destroying Christianity within this broadcast. What I was doing on the 6th was looking for a book at the night library that I found. I believe I found it there. I could have found it now elsewhere. I didn't find it when I went there on the 6th of October. Where the Sanhedrin it said, the rulings of the Sanhedrin around the time of Jesus and before. And one of the rulings was they got rid of the judging of the soda, a woman accused of adultery. But there it is. There's Jesus employing the laws of Moses in judging the soda. It's supposed to be some kind of mystical, weird thing he does with the moving of the hand. This is part of the grace thing, see, because in this get behind me Satan thing, Jesus gets, admonishes Peter. No, we're not here to do the laws of Moses or Yahweh. Peter said, what? I thought we were. I thought you were the Messiah of the Jews. No, I'm not the Messiah of the Jews. I'm the Messiah. I'm the of the Gentiles. I came for the Gentiles. Yeah, what? You came for the Gentiles? Really? Oh, get behind me, Satan, since you don't buy it. Well, of course he didn't buy it. Because all of a sudden what he's selling after he's got these 12 Jews to be his disciples is that he came to die on the cross. Yeah, that's it. So all Jews and Gentiles will be without sin. There will be no reason to follow any laws of Moses because I'm replacing the laws with grace. Grace? What do you mean grace? I can't go along with this. I'm a devout Jew. And so are the rest of my fellow disciples here. Who the hell are you? Get behind me, Satan. This is it. Finally got into it, breaking the ice at 21 minutes into this. And I mean, this is like a Puritan disguising himself as an Indian, say, I am your big chief in the sky. I'm here to give you a new religion, that'd be compatible with the Puritans. And the guy goes, no, you're not. I can see you're wearing makeup, you're a white man, that's what it's equal to. The other thing that Jesus was legalistic about was the cursing of the fig tree. Oh, it wasn't the time for the fig harvest. Well, yes, it was. In becoming studying both books of the Bible, I take it for granted I'm going to read a lie every 5 minutes. Every other verse is a lying contest. And you go, well, why are you into this? If you think everybody in the Bible is a liar, and even Jesus, why are you into this, John? Well, I began as a follower of Mary Baba, who said he was a God man, said he was a Buddha, Muhammad, Jesus in his past life. Now he's the God man, the avatar. I don't buy all that, but we'll see where that's going. So in Deuteronomy, I can't say the word, there's a ruling about the gleaners. When you harvest, don't take everything off the tree or don't harvest all the wheat. Let the gleaners come in there and glean the fields and the trees. And there's a punishment for not doing that, because that's what God wanted. God's words are say, hey, look, I want you to treat the gleaners, the foreigners, and good. Well, who are the foreigners? Well, Ruth, the Gentile, who married the ancestor of Jesus. So, and they had Peter and all these people being simple. I'm just a fisherman, I don't study the Torah, Oh, I'm a lumberman, oh yeah, you make furniture, Jesus? Oh yeah, I make chairs. I don't read the Torah. I don't go to synagogue. I just make chairs. But now I'm God incarnate. And then comes Paul when you open up Acts, he was the Pharisee of Pharisee. He was adept at the law. He studied under Gamaliel, the sage. He knew everything about legalism. Paul saw He is the head of my church. After slaughtering and torturing, the women and children of the first church, Jesus blinds them, on the road to Damascus, He goes, what are you going to kick against? Why are you picking on me? I'm just killing and torturing your followers. I'm putting the children in oil and boiling them alive before their parents to get them to denounce you, Lord. Oh, gosh. Total act. Total fraudulent, most fraudulent piece of literature I ever read. And that's the motive. But I actually had a conversation with Jesus in this little trailer up the McKenzie River at 4 a.m. Anyway, we'll do that another time. So then there comes where he opens the book, and I just found out there's a thing that was celebrated on the 7th of October that the Jews they come up and read from the Torah. It's the Shabbat, something like that. So I think that's when Jesus was asked to come up and read, and I think maybe he was a young man because they have the young men come up. It's the last celebration of the giving of the Torah, the words of God. And so Jesus reads from, about the rules of the Jubilee, which were done away with by the Sanhedrin about 50 years, 100 years. That's why I got to find this book before Jesus was born, and he's restoring them. Where the land, every 50 years, lands are restored to the original owners. Slaves are set free. And the Sanhedrin did away with that. And Jesus, as a legalistic mind, probably more brilliant than Satan Paul, and that's who he is. Get behind me, Satan Paul. When I read Acts, I said, this guy is Satan. I mean, really Satan. And he's alive. And he's embodiment. I mean, Donald Trump is the embodiment of Satan Paul. He's come amongst the Republican lawmakers. And he transformed them into violent, anti-law, anti-constitution fiends that threaten people's lives, that commit an act of terrorism on January 6th. And now the Republican Party is dead. They can't even elect a Speaker of the House to deal with the problems of the nation. These lawmakers are no longer lawmakers. They're cult followers of Satan Trump. And this is what I'll be talking about, because I predicted after reading Acts, and I opened back, that this guy, Satan Saul, Mr. SS, is coming back. I had visions of how he's coming back and how he's going to rule America and the world. And that's what I'll be discussing. I've got to keep these messages short. The other legalistic thing is the Sanhedrin passed a law saying that every child born with a defect, either blind, can't walk, got a deformed arm or a big blemish on the side of their face, the Sanhedrin made a law that God himself pre-marked these unborn children as born sinners once they were judged inside the womb. when I read that, and this is why I got to find that book, because it's just unbelievable, because these three rulings were screwed with. But this was the key, because I couldn't figure out what Jesus meant. I've come for the sinner, not the righteous. Couldn't figure that one out. And maybe I'll read the opinions of learned biblical preachers who went to Bible school and what the hell they think about it. A lot of them have books. And speaking of books, I'm revealing the core of my book today. And I want to say that everything I speak or write is protected by a special copyright that I applied for and got, that protects men of God, ministers, when they speak and when they write and when they get their sermons are protected. And I have that copyright number. I also copyrighted a novel and notes I took. I began the novel The Lion of God back in 1990, and Notes of the New Nazarite is copyrighted. So I have a copyright number for that too. So I'm revealing the core of my novel, which I've been working on, but now it's all blown up because the laws of God in a democracy are basically blown up. Every day that ministers, men of God, and evangelicals do not condemn Israel for the wholesale slaughter of innocents. And this is key. They can say, oh, they kept denying that Israel has the right to exist. Well, the Herodin were saying that Reformed Judaism that started in South Carolina is a degenerate form of Judaism. That is what was practiced in America, which was basically, they said, no, we're not for Zion anymore. America is the promised land now. So that's why the Zionists were condemning and degrading Reformed Judaism. So let's back up. What the hell was I saying? So rendering Jesus a legalist really puts an end to him as a Christian deity. He dies as I speak. I'm offing him. I'm killing him because he's false. He's the creation of Satan, Paul. Our government is on the verge of coming to an end. They may not get any funding from the Republican devils and their devils of Satan Trump. They're destroying the laws of the land, destroying the idea of lawmakers, and they're happy. They're happy for that, and they're happy for the chaos because they believe Jesus is coming. And only when there's a third world war in the Middle East and the building of the temple will Jesus come back in person. Well, when Jesus says to Peter, get behind me, Satan, all these laws don't matter. I'm not a legalist. I've come to die for your sins so I could be reborn. What? When you mean we've been following you for 2 years and now you're just telling us about this dying and being reborn thing? What the hell is that about? Get behind me, Satan. I can change my mind. Well, what? Who are you? I'm God incarnate. You no, you can't be the God of the Jews. Well, I am. No, no, you're not. You know. So what happened to Peter? He got murdered, along with Saint Stephen and a lot of other original disciples. Mark John, I think Satan Paul killed Mark John. So Jesus is made into to be equal with the Roman God. And the Roman gods hated Jewish laws because they incited a lot of Jews to riot. And the zealots and Sicarii, the assassins, were walking through the squares, and they bring out a knife and start stabbing Romans, and Jews that cohabitated with them. Let's go off to the synagogue, Caesarea. These Jews have such interesting arguments about the law. It's contrary to augurism. They don't know how to read the flight of birds or the fish swimming up the stream like our augurs do. Oh, God help us. This is the end of all this. As we watch these human beings being horrifically genocide, it's turned up in this cement and rubble. Oh yeah, that's what I was trying to say. See, we couldn't prevent 911 once 7 guys hijacked those planes or whatever, and all those innocent passengers who saw the plane descending, going, right for the trade center. They had to be freaking out. I'm in that plane a lot. But the world and the humanitarian God conscious thing that we're supposed to have, maybe China doesn't have. Look what they did to the Tibetan people. There's a good example. What China did to the Tibetan people is what Israel has done to the people of the West Bank and the Gaza. They suppressed their religious contrariness. So we could prevent Hamas from coming over through that fence because we didn't know it was going to happen. But we do know that jets are taking off from Israel loaded with bombs, and we know they're going to drop them on civilian property where civilians are. And you can see pictures of people, human beings, dragging out their children from the rubble. And there's nothing you can do, Mr. Minister, Mr. Evangelical, Pastor. Just don't bother saying anything. Don't read from your fake New Testament, that saying that the Jews are wrong and they can do this. No, you can't say that. And why? Because the Trumpites will walk out of your church because they want this to happen. So Jesus will come back. And this is why I'm destroying Jesus right now. And I already did. Because what he was doing was carrying on this weird teaching of Paul that the original disciples thought they could incorporate into their religion to help it spread into the diaspora there were 1 million Jews in Rome when Jesus was alive. And they thought Paul was going to be the inroad to that. But what he believed is in the resuscitation, that when you die, a entity, but it's a living entity, enters your body, and you're resurrected. Now, we see this when with Mary Magdalene at the tomb of Jesus, where the gardener comes up and talks to her. And she goes, "Master." She turns, and it's not her Jesus, but it was his voice, and it's the gardener. Well, and the tomb is empty. Well, what happened was when Jesus was, murdered, they put him in the tomb, and here comes the gardener of the cemetery, and somehow God takes his soul and puts him in the dead Jesus, and now Jesus is reborn. That's it. That's it. That's what Paul was teaching. And a sect of the Pharisees was teaching that. And there was another sect that really opposed that. They thought it was a horrible, horrible uh, uh, religious teaching, the resuscitation. So it wasn't resurrection, it was resuscitation. And this is how a lot of believers in Paul's Jesus would come back to life. And this is what they believe. They die, and some living person, lesser, and it has to be a lesser person. See, because, if you're a teacher the way, you got a halo, right? The halo people are getting resuscitated with the spirit, the Holy Spirit of a lesser person. They're body snatchers, basically. They're soul snatchers. And what happens to the gardener's body? I guess he dies, and they bury him. So they're just basically transferring these souls, see, from one death to another. So that's your eternal life, folks. There it is. There's the secret I've been working on in my book. And it's going to be a book. And if anybody violates my copyright, woe be. All right, we're 43 minutes into this, folks. I would say Christianity is dead and Judaism is dead because you can't, what is it called? What happened to the Jews? What did Hitler do to the Jews? They put them in a camp and slaughtered them and burned their bodies. We're watching that. Israel has created this concentration camp, and now they're liquidating all the people right before our eyes. They say, well, we have a right. That was done to us. That's by Hitler and the Germans said we didn't have a right to exist, so we came to Israel, Zion. We recreated Israel after being cast out by the Roman army, who defeated us, 70 AD, and we'll get into that next. All right, the West Poverty Show is John Presco, minister and prophet of the New Radio Church of God. You have a good day, if you can.